In the quiet town of Macon, Georgia, residents were stunned to learn that their seemingly friendly neighbor, William Cox, was actually Stephen Craig Johnson, a man who had been on the run for nearly 3 decades. Johnson's story is one of deception, evasion, and the remarkable lengths he went to in order to escape justice. This is a tale that takes us from a small town in Oregon to the bustling streets of Georgia, spanning nearly 30 years of hidden identity and life in the shadows. Welcome to this in depth exploration of one of the most fascinating and chilling prison escapes in recent history. Today, we delve into the life of Stephen Craig Johnson, a convicted sex offender whose audacious escape from an Oregon prison in 1994 led him to live a double life under a stolen identity. This is not just a story about a criminal on the run, it's a story about the relentless pursuit of justice, the impact on victims, and the technological advancements that eventually brought him back to face the consequences of his actions. Our journey begins in the early 1990s, a time when Stephen Craig Johnson was serving time for heinous crimes at the Mill Creek Correctional Facility in Salem, Oregon. Convicted of sex abuse and attempted sodomy, Johnson was a man with a dark past and a disturbing propensity for targeting young boys. But in November 1994, he made a daring escape from the correctional facility, slipping through the cracks of a system meant to hold him accountable. The escape set off a manhunt that would span decades and states, baffling authorities and leaving a trail of unanswered questions. Johnson's story is compelling not just because of his escape, but because of the life he led while on the run. Using the identity of a deceased child named William Cox, he managed to obtain a social security number, a driver's license, and even integrate himself into the community in Macon, Georgia. For nearly 30 years, he lived under the radar, blending in and avoiding detection. His ability to evade capture for so long raises critical questions about identity theft, the effectiveness of our criminal justice system, and the human capacity for reinvention and deception. Why tell this story now? Because it's a stark reminder that the past can catch up with anyone, no matter how much time has passed. Johnson's capture in 2024 was made possible through new investigative techniques and technology, showcasing the relentless efforts of law enforcement to bring fugitives to justice. It's a story that resonates with themes of accountability, the long arm of the law, and the enduring impact of crime on victims and communities. As we unravel this complex tale, we'll hear from those who lived through it, including law enforcement officials, community members, and experts in criminal justice. So sit back and join us as we dive deep into the life and escape of Stephen Craig Johnson, a man who thought he could outrun his past but ultimately could not escape his fate. This is a story of crime, escape, and eventual justice. A story that proves the truth can remain hidden for only so long before it comes to light. To understand the story of Stephen Craig Johnson, we must first look back to his beginnings. Born in the late 1950s, Johnson's early life was marked by the simplicity and challenges of growing up in a small town in Oregon. He was born into a modest family, with parents who worked hard to make ends meet. Despite the quaint exterior of small-town life, there were underlying issues that would later come to the forefront. Little is publicly known about the intimate details of Johnson's childhood, but those who knew him describe a boy who was quiet and reserved. He attended local schools, where he was an average student, not drawing much attention to himself. However, as he grew older, there were signs that all was not well. Friends and family recall incidents that hinted at a darker side, incidents that, at the time, might have seemed like mere youthful mischief, but in retrospect, were red flags for the troubled path he would later take. Family background plays a crucial role in shaping an individual, and Johnson was no exception. Raised in a household that struggled with economic hardships, there was an undercurrent of instability. His relationship with his parents was strained, marred by strict discipline and a lack of emotional support. This environment, combined with his introverted nature, led Johnson to withdraw further into himself, creating a breeding ground for the latent tendencies that would later manifest in criminal behavior. Early signs of trouble began to emerge in Johnson's adolescence. There were minor run-ins with the law, petty theft, vandalism, and other juvenile offenses. While these incidents might have been brushed off as typical teenage rebellion, they were indicative of deeper issues. Teachers and community members noticed his growing detachment and occasional aggressive outbursts, but in the context of the times, these behaviors were often overlooked or inadequately addressed. It's important to consider the psychological aspects of Johnson's early life. Experts in criminal psychology often point to a combination of environmental factors and inherent personality traits that contribute to criminal behavior. In Johnson's case, a lack of emotional support, combined with possible undiagnosed psychological issues, set the stage for his future actions. These early years are crucial in understanding the making of a man who would go on to commit heinous crimes and orchestrate a daring escape from prison. As we move forward, we'll explore how the boy from a small Oregon town evolved into a criminal whose actions shocked a community and led to a manhunt spanning nearly 30 years. Join us as we delve into the criminal activities that defined Stephen Craig Johnson's early adult life. Stephen Craig Johnson, a convicted pedophile, escaped from the Mill Creek Correctional Facility in Salem, Oregon on November 29, 1994. At the time of his escape, he was serving a sentence for sexual abuse and attempted sodomy. His convictions included 3 counts of first-degree sex abuse and 1 count of first-degree attempted sodomy 3. Johnson targeted preteen boys, presenting a high probability of victimizing them. Authorities issued an arrest warrant for his escape, but he managed to evade capture for nearly 3 decades. During his time on the run, Johnson assumed the stolen identity of a Texas child who had died in 1962. He obtained a copy of the deceased child's birth certificate and used it to acquire a Social Security number in Texas in 1995, just a year after his escape. In 1998, he even obtained a driver's license in Georgia under this false identity. Johnson's ability to live undetected for so long shocked neighbors in his Macon apartment, where he had been residing since 2011. They described him as a seemingly friendly man who exercised regularly and went on morning walks. Ultimately, law enforcement officials arrested Stephen Craig Johnson in Georgia, where he had been living under the name William Cox for decades. His capture highlights the impact of his crimes on the victims and the community, as well as the persistence of law enforcement in bringing fugitives to justice. Johnson now awaits extradition to Oregon, where he will face the consequences of his actions. The case of Stephen Craig Johnson serves as a reminder of the lasting effects of sexual abuse and the importance of pursuing justice for victims and their families.